The galactic combat arena floated in the darkness of space like a giant metal flower. It was old, very old. 3,000 years had passed since the first aliens built it, and in all that time it had never stopped being used. When species had problems they could not solve with words, they came here. They sent their best fighters. They settled things the old way. But this was not a place of death. The rules were clear. All fighters must use practice weapons, blunted blades, safe hammers, tools made to hurt but not to kill. The arena was about honor, not murder. At least that was what the rules said. Park stood at the entrance gate and looked up at the massive structure above him. He was not a tall man. He was not wide or covered in muscles. He looked like what he was, a soldier of 34 years who had spent more time training than fighting. His black hair was cut short, and his face showed no emotion at all. Behind him, the other humans from Earth's group watched with worried eyes. "This is a mistake," said. She was the military helper for the Earth team, a woman with sharp eyes and a sharp mind. They have won every fight for the last 100 years. Their champion has killed 11 opponents, killed them, in an arena with safety rules. Ambassador Han stood next to her. She was older, with gray in her hair and the calm face of someone who had seen many difficult things. The council demanded a combat representative. We had no choice. "We had a choice about who to send," said. "Is good, but good enough for this." Looked at the soldier walking toward the arena. He carried a long bundle wrapped in old cloth. It was the only thing he had asked to bring. "His family has been soldiers for 400 years, said quietly. "Every generation, every child, they train from the time they can walk. When I asked Earth Command for our best fighter, they did not give me a name. They gave me a family, and that family sent." The arena doors opened with a deep sound, and walked inside. The fighting floor was huge. Stone tiles covered the ground, each one carved with the names of past champions from 100 different worlds. Light came from everywhere and nowhere, making shadows disappear. Around the floor, seats rose up like mountains, filled with aliens of every shape and size. Some had 4 arms. Some had no arms at all. Some floated. Some crawled. All of them had come to watch. And standing in the center of the arena was the champion. Commander was a monster, 9 feet tall, 4 arms, each one thick with muscle. His skin was covered in natural bone armor, white plates that grew from his body like shields. His face had no nose, just 2 slits, and his eyes were small and red and full of hunger. He looked at and laughed. The sound echoed through the arena, and many aliens laughed with him. A human, the newcomers to space. The small, soft creatures who had only been flying between stars for 200 years. And this was their champion, this quiet man with no armor and no visible weapons. The arena master floated down from above. It was a creature made of light and gas, old beyond counting, and its voice filled every corner of the space. "The dispute is registered, the mining rights. Earth Coalition claims territory. Empire claims territory. Combat will decide. Standard rules apply. Practice weapons only. Fight until yield or inability to continue." Picked up his weapon from a rack nearby. It was a hammer, but calling it a hammer was like calling a mountain a rock. The head was bigger than its whole body. It was made of dark metal that seemed to eat the light. Even blunted for practice, it could crush bones. It could break walls. It could end lives. "Human," said, his voice deep and rough. "Where is your weapon? Do you plan to fight with your tiny hands?" Said nothing. He walked to the center of the arena, his wrapped bundle still in his arms. When he reached his position, he knelt down and began to unwrap it. The cloth was old, very old. It had symbols on it, writing in a language that no one in the arena could read. His hands moved slowly, with respect, like he was unwrapping something holy. And then the sword appeared. It was not impressive at first look. A straight blade about 3 feet long, with a simple handle wrapped in old leather. The metal was dark, almost black, with strange patterns running through it like frozen rivers. Characters were carved along the spine, words in a language dead for centuries. But something changed in the arena when that blade touched the air. The arena master moved backward. Several aliens in the front rows stood up from their seats, even stopped smiling for just a moment. There was something in that sword, something old, something that had seen blood and war and death, something that remembered. Stood up, he held the sword in both hands, the blade pointing down, and for the first time he looked directly at. "This blade was made in the year 1592 by your counting," he said. His voice was quiet, but somehow everyone in the arena heard him. "It was carried by my ancestor in a war against invaders. It has passed through 16 generations of my family. It has never been defeated." Laughed again, but the sound was not as strong as before. "An antique, a museum piece. I will shatter it with one blow." His eyes did not change. His face did not move. He simply raised the sword, the dark blade catching the light, and spoke 3 words that would echo through history. "You may try." Up in the observation area, gripped the railing until her fingers turned white. Ambassador stood perfectly still, watching. "He is either very brave or very foolish," said a diplomat nearby, his voice full of amusement. Did not look at him. Her eyes stayed on the old sword in his hands, on the calm certainty in his posture. "No," she said softly. "He is something else entirely. He is ready." The arena bell began to ring. The arena master floated between the 2 fighters, its body of light and gas pulsing with concern. In 3,000 years of watching combat, it had seen many strange things, but something about the human sword made it feel a very old and very forgotten emotion: fear. "This is not standard," the arena master said, its voice careful. "All fighters must use weapons from the approved list, practice blades, safety hammers, controlled tools." Did not lower his sword. His grip remained steady, his eyes calm. "Article 7 of the Arena Compact," he said. "Ancestral weapons of cultural importance are permitted if they existed before the species made first contact with other worlds. Earth made contact 187 years ago. This sword is 433 years old." The arena master was silent for a long moment. Around the arena, aliens whispered to each other. Some pulled out devices to check the rules. Others simply stared at the dark blade in the human's hands. "The human speaks truth," the arena master finally said. "Article 7 applies. The weapon is permitted." Slammed his hammer against the ground. The stone cracked under the blow. "Let him keep his toy," the growled. "It changes nothing. I have broken 1,000 blades. I have crushed fighters twice my size. One small human with one old sword is not a challenge. It is a joke." He turned to the crowd and raised all 4 arms. The supporters cheered, their voices shaking the walls. Was their hero, their undefeated champion. He had brought them victory after victory for 20 years. What was one human to such a legend? But not everyone was cheering. In the observation area, Ambassador noticed that several alien diplomats were looking at their screens with strange expressions. One of them, a tall creature with blue skin and no eyes, turned to her. "Your soldier's sword," it said. "My people have records of human history. We study all new species carefully. That blade, is it truly from the war?" Nodded, "It is." The blue alien made a sound that might have been surprise. "Then your people are either very foolish or very clever. That war. Your ancestors faced an army of 200,000 with far fewer soldiers. They were invaded, outmatched. Everyone expected them to fall." "And yet we did not fall," said. "No, you did not." The alien looked back at the arena floor. "Perhaps this fight is not as simple as it appears." Down below had moved into position. He stood with his feet apart, the sword held in both hands before him. His breathing was slow and deep. His eyes never left. The champion stopped playing to the crowd and turned to face his opponent. For the first time, he really looked at the human, not with anger or amusement, but with the careful attention of a true warrior. He saw a man of average height and average build. No armor, no shield, just simple fighting clothes and an old sword, but there was something in the way the human stood, something in the perfect stillness of his body, like a snake waiting to strike, like a storm waiting to break. "You are different from the other humans I have seen," said slowly. "They are soft, scared. You are not scared." "No," agreed, "I am not." "Why, you must know you cannot win. My people are stronger, faster, harder to kill. We have natural armor, 4 arms, we were born for combat. What do humans have?" Was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but clear. "We have time," he said. "We have memory. We have 400 years of my family learning how to fight enemies bigger and stronger than ourselves. Every lesson written in blood. Every technique paid for with lives. You think your natural gifts make you strong, but we had no gifts. We had to earn everything, and we remember every drop of that earning." He raised the sword slightly. The dark metal seemed to pulse with something that was not quite light. "This blade has a name. In my language, it is called Nation's Memory. It was forged during a war when my country faced destruction. The man who carried it fought on burning ships against impossible odds. He did not have strength or size or numbers. He had only skill and will and the refusal to surrender." His red eyes narrowed. "Pretty words, but words do not win fights." "No," agreed, "they do not. Shall we begin?" The arena master rose higher above them, its light growing brighter. "The rules are set. The weapons are approved. Combat for the mining rights will now begin. Fight with honor, fight until yield." The great bell rang once more. And charged. There was no warning, no battle cry. The simply exploded forward, all 9 feet and 4 arms driving toward like a living missile. The hammer came up, catching the light, the massive head aimed at the human's chest. It was a killing blow. Practice weapon or not, that much force would shatter bones, would destroy organs, would end the fight in one terrible moment. The crowd held its breath, closed her eyes, unable to watch, and moved. It was not a block, it was not a dodge, it was something else entirely. One moment he was standing in the path of destruction. The next moment he was simply elsewhere, to the left. Behind, the sword extended in a perfect line, its tip resting gently against the gap in the neck armor. His hammer struck empty air. The stone floor exploded where it had been standing. Dust filled the arena. When it cleared, everyone could see the truth. The human had not been touched, and his sword was at the champion's throat. "First point," the arena master announced, its voice shaking, "to the human." The arena was completely silent. 10,000 aliens stared at the scene below, trying to understand what they had just seen. The undefeated champion, frozen in place, with an antique blade at his neck. In the observation area, opened her eyes. Her hands were shaking. "How?" she whispered. "I didn't even see him move." Ambassador smiled, but there was no joy in it, only a deep and ancient pride. 400 years, she said. That is how long his family has been preparing for a moment like this. Every day, every generation, waiting for someone to challenge them to a fight they were not supposed to win. She looked at, standing calm and still in the center of the arena, and spoke words that would later become famous across 100 worlds. "The galaxy gave us practice steel. We brought 4 centuries of war." Pulled away from the blade at his neck, his 4 hands gripped his hammer so tight that the metal handle began to bend. Ray burned in his red eyes like fire. "A trick," he growled. "A lucky trick. It will not happen again." Stepped back smoothly, returning to his fighting position. The dark sword moved through the air without sound, settling back into the guard stance that his family had used for centuries. His face showed nothing. No pride, no fear, just patient attention. "Then try again," he said. And did. The second attack was different, smarter. They did not simply charge forward. He moved to the side, using his longer legs to circle around. His four arms worked together, the hammer swinging in complex patterns designed to confuse, to trap, to crush. Many species had tried to fight over the years. They always made the same mistake. They watched the weapon. They tried to predict where the hammer would go. But a warrior could change direction in the middle of a swing. 4 arms meant 4 times the options. It was like fighting a storm that could think. Did not watch the weapon. He watched his eyes. The hammer came from the left, was not there. It swept down from above, was already moving. It thrust forward like a spear, turned his body sideways, and the massive head passed so close that he could feel the wind on his face. And each time he moved, the sword moved with him. Tap, a touch on his wrist. Tap, a touch on his knee. Tap, a touch on the gap between his armor plates. Points, small points, nothing that hurt, nothing that stopped the fight, but each tap was a message. Each tap said, "I could have cut you, I chose not to." The crowd began to whisper, then to talk, then to shout. This was not possible. This small human was dancing around their champion like was moving through water. The undefeated warrior, the pride of the empire, could not land a single blow. In the observation area, was searching through information on her device, so fast that her fingers were blurring. "I found it," she said, her voice high with shock. "The sword, the family's ancestor who first carried that blade. He was not just a soldier. He created a complete fighting system, movements, techniques, philosophy, everything. It is still taught today, still practiced." "Many martial arts exist on Earth," said a diplomat from another world. "This means nothing." "You do not understand," looked up, her eyes wide. "The Park family did not just practice this art, they protected it, they improved it. 16 generations of warriors, each one adding their own lessons, each one training from childhood, each one carrying that exact sword." She turned back to watch the fight. "Is not just good. He is the result of 400 years of improvement. Every fight his ancestors ever had, every technique that worked, every lesson learned. It all lives in him, in his muscles, in his memory, in his blood." Down on the arena floor, was starting to understand something terrible. He was being studied. Each of his attacks showed the human something new. Each swing of the hammer gave information, the way moved, the patterns he preferred, the small signs that came before each technique. Was not just avoiding attacks, he was learning. And was running out of tricks. The stopped attacking. He stood in the center of the arena, breathing hard, his 4 arms hanging at his sides. Sweat ran down his bone-armored face. For the first time in his fighting life, he felt something close to despair. "What are you?" he demanded. Tilted his head slightly, like a bird looking at something interesting. "I am a park," he said simply. "That is all. Your movements, they are not natural. No creature can move like that. You are reading my attacks before I make them." "Yes. How is this possible?" Was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle, almost kind, like a teacher explaining something to a student. "Your people have natural armor. You are born strong, born fast, born ready to fight. You did not have to struggle for these gifts. They were given to you." He raised the sword slightly, letting the ancient blade catch the light. "My people have nothing, soft skin, weak bodies, short lives. We should have died 1,000 times in our history. Other species, other nations, they looked at us and saw easy prey." His eyes met. "But we did not die. We learned. We adapted. We took every defeat and turned it into a lesson. Every loss became a new technique. Every enemy became a new teacher. For thousands of years, we have been perfecting the art of surviving against stronger opponents." He stepped forward and actually stepped back. "You have gifts. We have scars, and scars teach lessons that gifts never can. The arena was completely silent now. Every alien in every seat was watching. Many had never seen a retreat before. Many had never imagined it was possible. Ambassador leaned forward, her hands pressed together before her face like she was praying. "Show them," she whispered, "show them what humans really are." As if he heard her, shifted his stance. The sword rose, and for the first time in the fight he attacked. It was not fast by the standards of the galaxy. Other species could move faster. Other weapons could strike harder. But there was something in the way moved that made everyone watching feel a chill run through their bodies. It was perfect. Every angle, every position, every tiny movement of every muscle was exactly correct. There was no wasted energy, no uncertain moments. It was like watching a machine, except machines were not this beautiful. The blade sang through the air, raised his hammer to block, moving faster than he had ever moved before. And the dark steel of the ancient sword met the metal of the practiced weapon, with a sound like a bell being struck. But it was not the sound of breaking steel. It was the sound of the hammer cracking. A line appeared in the massive weapon's head, small at first, then spreading, stared at it with his mouth open, unable to believe what he was seeing. "I am impossible," he stammered. "Practice weapons are reinforced. They are designed to survive any blow. That sword is 400 years old. It should be brittle, weak. It should have shattered." Looked at his blade. The dark metal was untouched. The ancient characters carved into its spine seemed to glow with a faint light that might have been a trick of the arena lights, or might have been something else entirely. "This sword was forged in fire and blood," he said. "It was made by a master who knew that one day his descendants would face enemies beyond imagination. He built it to last forever." He looked back at, and so far it has. The bell rang, signaling a pause in the combat. The arena master floated down, its light body flickering with confusion. "The damage to the weapon. This is unusual. Does Commander wish to continue with a replacement weapon?" Looked at his cracked hammer. He looked at the human standing calmly before him. He looked at the ancient sword that should not exist, that should not be so strong, that should not be able to do any of this. And for the first time in his life, he understood fear. "Yes," he said, his voice rough, "I will continue. Bring me a new weapon." But as the attendants rushed to find a replacement, knew something had changed. This was no longer a fight he was certain to win. This was a fight he might actually lose. The arena attendants brought a new hammer. This one was bigger than the first, heavier, made of the strongest metal the Empire had ever created. They called it star iron because it was forged from the heart of a dying sun. Took the weapon and felt its weight in his 4 hands. It was a weapon that had never been broken. A weapon that had killed creatures 10 times stronger than any human. With this, he would end the fight quickly. He would smash the human and his ancient sword into dust. That is what he told himself. But deep inside, in a place he did not want to look, something cold was growing. Something that whispered, "What if even this is not enough?" The break ended, the bell rang, combat continued. This time did not charge. He had learned from his earlier mistakes. Instead, he circled slowly, watching the human with all the attention of a predator studying prey, except he was no longer sure who was the predator and who was the prey. Moved with him, turning to keep the in front of him. The sword remained steady in his hands. He did not seem tired at all. His breathing was calm. His eyes were patient. He looked like he could do this for hours, for days, for as long as it took. "You fight like no human I have ever seen," said. "You have seen many humans fight. In practice matches, training sessions, I always won easily." "Those humans were not raised for this," said. "They were soldiers, workers, explorers, good people, but not warriors, not in the old way." "And you are?" "I am the 16th of my line to carry this sword. The first was a naval commander who defeated 400 ships with only 12. He was a genius of war. Every generation since then has studied his techniques, improved them, added our own lessons. We do not fight like other humans because we have been preparing for 400 years for battles that other humans cannot imagine. Felt the cold thing inside him grow larger. Why? He demanded. Why prepare for so long? Humans only joined the galaxy recently. You could not have known you would face aliens. Smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was there. We did not prepare for aliens. We prepared for anyone who underestimated us. In our history, there have been many. Empires that thought we were too small to resist. Armies that thought we were too weak to fight. Nations that thought we would simply surrender. The smile faded. They were all wrong, and those of us who survived their attacks made a promise. We would never be weak again. We would train our children and their children and their children after that. We would keep the old weapons and the old ways, and when the next enemy came, we would be ready. He raised the sword slightly. You are the next enemy, Commander, and we are ready. Roared and attacked. The new hammer moved even faster than the old one. The star iron cut through the air with a sound like tearing cloth. 4 arms worked in perfect coordination, creating a pattern of strikes that no opponent had ever survived. But was not any opponent. He moved like smoke, like shadow, like something that was there and not there at the same time. The hammer passed through spaces he had occupied a moment before. The powerful strikes hit nothing but air. And always, the dark sword found its target. The crowd was standing now. Aliens of every species were on their feet, unable to believe what they were seeing. Some were cheering, some were screaming, some were simply staring in silent shock. In the observation area had tears running down her face. She did not know why she was crying. Pride, perhaps, or relief, or something deeper that she could not name. He is beautiful, she whispered. This is beautiful. Ambassador nodded slowly. 400 years of beauty, she said. Every movement bought with blood and pain and loss. This is what humans look like when we stop pretending to be less than we are. Down on the arena floor was breaking. His attacks grew wilder, less controlled. He was swinging the hammer with all his strength, no longer trying to be clever, just trying to hit something, anything. Rage and fear mixed in his eyes like oil and fire. Saw the change, and he made a decision. It was time to end this. He had been holding back, not from kindness but from strategy. He wanted the galaxy to see. He wanted every species watching to understand that this was not luck, not a trick, not something that could happen once and never again. He wanted them to see human skill at its highest level. And now they had seen enough. Stopped moving. He planted his feet and raised the sword in front of his body. The dark blade pointed straight up, catching the light, the ancient characters glowing with that strange fire that seemed to come from inside the metal itself. Saw the human stop and felt a surge of hope. Finally, the creature was tired. He had made a mistake. This was the moment. He gathered all his strength, all 4 arms, all his weight, all his rage. He leaped into the air, bringing the star iron hammer down with enough force to crack the floor, to break walls, to crush anything in its path. This would end it. This would end everything. The hammer fell like a comet and moved one final time. It was not a dodge. It was not a block. It was something that had no name, something that his ancestor had created 400 years ago on a burning ship in the middle of the sea. A technique passed down in secret, practiced in silence, waiting for the perfect moment. The sword moved in a circle, small, tight, perfect. It touched the hammer's head at exactly the right angle at exactly the right moment. It did not try to stop the force, it redirected it. Felt his weapon twist in his hands, felt his body spin in a direction he had not chosen, felt the world turn upside down. And then he was on the ground. He lay on the ancient stones, 4 arms spread out, the hammer somewhere he could not see. Above him the human stood calmly, the dark sword pointed at his throat. The arena was silent, completely silent. 10,000 aliens, not one of them breathing. "Yield," said. The word was quiet, soft, but in the silence it sounded like thunder. Stared up at the human, at the ancient blade, at the calm eyes that showed no anger, no hate, no pride, just patience, just waiting. He thought about his honor, about his people, about the empire that had sent him here expecting victory. He thought about standing up, fighting on, dying before admitting defeat. And then he thought about those eyes, those patient, waiting eyes, eyes that had seen everything he could do, eyes that were not impressed, eyes that knew with perfect certainty that the fight was already over. He started. His voice cracked, he closed his eyes. "I yield." The words fell like stones into still water, and then the silence broke. The arena erupted, cheering and screaming and sounds that did not recognize. Aliens were standing on their seats, pointing, talking, arguing. Some were crying, some were laughing, some were doing both at once. Lowered his sword. He stepped back and bowed slightly to his fallen opponent. A small gesture, a respectful gesture. The gesture of a warrior who understood that every fight had 2 sides and both deserved honor. Lay on the ground for a long moment. Then slowly, painfully, he pushed himself up to his knees. He looked at the human, looked at the sword, looked at the calm face that had just defeated him without anger, without cruelty, without even seeming to try very hard. "You could have killed me," he said quietly. "Many times you held back." "Yes." "Why?" Consider the question carefully before answering. "Because killing you was not the point. The point was showing everyone what humans are capable of. Death would have distracted from that message." He sheathed the sword in one smooth motion. "Remember this day, Commander, and tell your people what you saw. Tell them that humans are small and weak and short-lived. Tell them that we have no natural weapons, no armor, no special powers. And tell them that we are still not to be underestimated." He turned and walked toward the exit, leaving the defeated champion on the floor of the ancient arena. Behind him, the crowd was still roaring. The news spread across the galaxy like fire spreading through dry grass. On 1,000 worlds, in 100 languages, the story was told and retold. The human who defeated the undefeated. The ancient sword that broke the unbreakable. The small, soft creature from a young species who had stood against a giant and won without taking a single wound. Video of the fight was watched billions of times. Analysts from every species studied each movement, each technique, each moment where had turned certain death into casual victory. They wrote papers. They made documentaries. They argued and debated and tried to understand. Most of them failed. They could see what did. They could not understand how he did it. 400 years of family training, passed from parent to child, refined and perfected across 16 generations. It was not something that could be learned from watching. It was something that had to be lived. On Earth, the Park family received thousands of requests. Governments wanted to hire them as trainers. Corporations wanted to sponsor them. Universities wanted to study them. They declined everything. They had no interest in fame or money. They had a tradition to maintain, children to train, a sword to protect. Himself returned to his simple life after only 2 weeks of ceremonies and meetings. He went back to his family home in the Korean mountains, back to the training hall where he had practiced since he could walk. He hung the ancient sword in its place of honor and began teaching his niece the first forms of the family art. She was 5 years old. She would train for the next 20 years before she was allowed to touch the sword, and her children would do the same, and their children after that. The chain would continue unbroken as it had for 4 centuries. But the story did not end with his return home. 3 months after the arena fight, Ambassador Han was invited to speak at the Galactic Council. It was a rare honor for such a young species. Usually, only the oldest and most powerful civilizations were asked to address the full council. She stood at the center of a massive chamber, surrounded by representatives from 500 worlds. Some were taller than buildings. Some were smaller than insects. Some existed as pure energy or lived in liquid or breath gases that would kill a human in seconds. All of them were watching her. And all of them were thinking about the fight. "Thank you for this invitation," began. Her voice was calm and clear, her gray hair pulled back from her face. "I know why you asked me here. You want to understand what happened in the arena. You want to know if it was real or a trick or something that could never happen again." She paused, letting the translation systems catch up. It was real. It was not a trick, and it could happen again at any time with any human who has prepared for it. Whispers ran through the chamber. Some species shifted uncomfortably. Others leaned forward with interest. You look at humans and see a young species. Small bodies, short lives, no natural weapons, no special abilities, and you are correct. By the standards of this galaxy, we are nothing special. She smiled. But you are missing something important. You are judging us by what we are. You should be judging us by what we have survived. She touched a control and images appeared in the air around her. Images from human history, wars and disasters, plagues and famines, empires rising and falling, millions dying in conflicts that had no meaning and no winners. This is our past. We have been killing each other for 100,000 years. We have faced extinction more times than we can count. We have destroyed ourselves and rebuilt ourselves and destroyed ourselves again. The images changed. Now they showed hospitals and schools, farms and factories, cities reaching toward the sky, spaceships leaving Earth for the first time. And somehow we are still here, not because we are strong, not because we are lucky, because we learned. Every death taught us something. Every disaster made us better. Every enemy gave us new techniques, new tools, new ways to survive. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes and sensors and other organs of 100 different species. The sword that Sergeant Park carried was made during a war that almost destroyed his nation. The techniques he used were developed by people who faced impossible odds and refused to surrender. That is the human way. We do not avoid suffering. We transform it. We turn pain into power. We turn loss into learning. She stepped forward, her voice growing stronger. "You asked what happened in the arena. I will tell you. You saw a human stop pretending." Silence filled the chamber. "We joined your galaxy as newcomers, as students. We were polite and quiet and careful. We did not want to make enemies. We did not want to seem threatening. So we held back. We showed you only our soft side, our peaceful side, our curious and friendly side." Her eyes hardened. Commander saw our true side. The side that survived 100,000 years of war. The side that refuses to give up no matter the odds. The side that takes every defeat and turns it into a weapon. She spread her hands. "We do not want conflict. We do not want enemies. We came to the stars seeking friends and knowledge and new experiences. But make no mistake. If anyone threatens us, if anyone attacks our people, if anyone tries to take what is ours." She smiled again, and this time there was something in that smile that made several species very nervous. "We will bring our ancient swords, and we will show you what 400 years of preparation looks like." The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then slowly the representative stood up. He was a large male, covered in bone armor with the same red eyes as Commander. The chamber watched tensely, unsure what would happen. The walk to the center of the floor. He stood before Ambassador, towering over her, his 4 arms hanging at his sides. And then he bowed. It was a deep bow, a respectful bow, the bow of a warrior acknowledging another warrior. In culture, it was the highest honor one fighter could give another. The Empire recognizes the strength of humanity, he said, his voice carrying through the chamber. We will remember this lesson, and we will tell our children and their children that the small species from Earth is not to be challenged lightly. He straightened up and looked directly at. You have earned our respect, Ambassador. That is not an easy thing to do. Bowed in return, matching his depth exactly. And you have earned ours, Representative. Commander fought with honor, he lost with honor. In our culture, that matters more than victory. The nodded slowly, then he returned to his seat. One by one, other representatives began to stand, to bow, to speak words of acknowledgement in a dozen languages. It was not a surrender, it was not a threat, it was something more valuable than either. It was understanding. By the time left the chamber, humanity's place in the galaxy had changed forever. They were no longer the newcomers, the students, the small, soft species that older civilizations could ignore. They were something else now. They were survivors, warriors, a people who had been forged in fire and blood and 400 years of preparation. And they had only just begun to show what they could do. Far away, in a mountain training hall on Earth, Park put down his teaching sword and walked to the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors of gold and red. His niece continued practicing behind him, her small body working through the first forms of the family art. He did not know about the council meeting, did not know about the bowing and the speeches and the changing political landscape. He only knew that the sword was safely home, the family tradition continued, and somewhere out there in the stars, people were learning an important lesson. Never underestimate a human, especially one with 400 years of preparation. He smiled, turned back to his student, and began correcting her stance. There was always more to learn, more to teach, more to prepare for. The Park family sword hung on the wall, its dark metal catching the dying light. It had been carried into battle 100 times. It had never known defeat. And as long as the family remembered, it never would.